Hey everybody, this is the beginning of the February 12th meeting of the Kensington Community Services and Police District. I'm the board president, Len Welsh. We are getting ready to go into closed session. I'll first take roll call. Director Gillette?
Here.
Director Cordova?
Here.
Director Sherris-Watt?
Here.
And Director Tooms?
Present.
Okay, the full board is present. Before we go into closed session, this is a time when members of the public may stand up and give comment if they would like, so I will be happy to entertain any public comments. Of course, there is another opportunity once we come back out of closed session. Excuse me, you're welcome to comment again. Well, yes, you can actually. I will say that there's going to be, I anticipate a lot of commenters today, and I'll say this again when we come back into closed session. The policies and procedures call for a 5-minute limit to comments. As you know, I've never enforced that in the past because I've wanted everybody to get everything off their chest. If we have too many people tonight, I may have to impose that limit so we give everybody a chance to speak, that's all. So any comments now, or shall we go into closed session? Okay, please do.
Yes. Hello, I'm Gloria Morrison, longtime Kensington resident. I'm seeing that the first item is the board will enter in closed session to discuss the performance, general manager's performance review. So I'm very interested. Will this review also talk about the happenings of last May 2014? What is the time period we're talking about?
We will be discussing that time period.
2014. Okay, and it says that he will discuss personnel appointment, employment, and evaluation of district personnel. Will that involve suspensions, no suspensions, length of time for evaluation, and the gathering of facts for personnel?
It could. This is mainly a reporting session.
Which deals with personnel.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, there's several things that I'm very interested in. I'm looking at the MOU, the one that is going to go out if there's a new contract. Talks about violation of orders, failure of an employee either willfully or through negligence to perform the duties of his rank or assignment, or violation of any police regulation or order. I'm curious, is the loss of one's service revolver considered a violation of regulation or order?
Anybody care to comment on that, Chief, or?
No, that's too close to personnel matter. I'm not going to comment on that. This is public comment session.
Well, it's a question, it's a legal question. Can we answer it or not?
Will it involve this?
And we're not.
Question one more time.
Excuse me.
Can I rephrase the question so I think it'll be,
Okay,
there won't be concerns
sure.
about legality. I think your question is, should somebody lose their service weapon while off duty? Is that any kind of a violation of?
Yes, of the, what is it called here? Regulation or order.
Right,
Yes.
so it's a hypothetical question.
We have policies on how weapons should be secured, yes.
So all of those are known, and it takes a long time to determine whether this policy has been violated, say, since last May until January of this year. That's a possibility?
I'm not, you're saying, does it take a long time to figure that out?
Yes.
Is that your question?
Yes, whether the regulation or order has been violated. I'm only looking at the MOU.
I don't know that that question itself takes a long time, but whenever there's an incident that involves a personnel action that is possibly an infraction or some other violation, there must be an investigation, and sometimes investigations can take quite some time. That's the best I can do for that.
Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to any information that we receive before the beginning of the public session. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs.
Thank you for
Moore.
your comment.
This performance assessment review says it's to discuss the general manager / chief of police performance review. Does that mean that these two positions are considered as one in this evaluation, or are they considered separately as two different?
It's a single position with multiple duties, as I understand it.
Okay, so you could not, for example, consider the performance of a person holding both those positions separately.
It's one human being, so I think we have to evaluate the whole human being and how they're composed.
Two positions.
Well, it's a set of duties. I mean, we're calling it two positions, but it's a set of duties, and we have to look at the whole picture. Anything else?
Good evening. My name is Romy Douglas. I'm the former PTA president of Kensington Elementary School. I just wanted to come in light of the current events. I don't think this is on.
Can everybody hear her?
Can everyone hear me? Sorry.
Can
okay,
you-
I'll speak up.
Could you try one thing? Could you speak a little closer to the microphone? I think it'll work.
Is it on? Hello?
Yeah, there you
Is that
go.
working?
There you go.
Okay, sorry. My name's Romy Douglas. I'm the former PTA president of Kensington Hilltop School. And in light of current events, I wanted to come down here and just say a few things. It has been my pleasure to work with many of the police officers on our force. Every single one of these fine officers that you see here has earned the respect of our community, and they do honor to the badge that they wear on their chests every day. And Keith Barrow has not done honor to his badge, and he has not done honor to his fellow officers or to our community. And I find it abhorrent that it has taken this long for us to find out about it and that nothing has been done. Furthermore, since the officers do come to our school and they patrol the halls of our elementary school on a daily basis, I am stupefied that someone of such low moral character and zero integrity is being held up as a role model to the children of our school. And it is my recommendation that he be removed from the police force immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Douglas.
Do we have another commenter? Okay, with that, we will adjourn and go into closed session. We'll be back at 7:30. Meeting. We ready? This is the February 12th meeting of the Board of Directors. Going to do the best I can, all right? This is the February 12th meeting of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District Board of Directors. My name is Len Welsh. I'm the board president. I'm going to take roll call. Ms. Cordova?
Present.
Ms. Gillette?
Here. Here.
Ms. Sheris Watt?
Here.
Mr. Tooms?
Present.
All right, we have a full board present. The first thing I'm going to do is report out on the closed session we just had. We had two items we discussed. One was the discussion of the general manager, chief of police performance, and the history of the investigation that everybody is here wanting to hear about. No action was taken on that item. We had another discussion about the appointment, potential extension of the contract of the chief of police. We took no action on that item. However, we do plan to have a special closed meeting to determine what action to take on the chief, and that is set for next Monday at 8 p.m. That's a closed session. You will be invited to come to the closed session and give public comment prior to the closed session if you'd like. So we now open the regular meeting. I'm sorry?
Would you clarify, is that Monday the 23rd?
Yes. No?
Monday the 16th.
I'm sorry, the 16th, next week. Monday next week. Yes, we consider this urgent and we didn't want to waste any time.
Could you ask them to give the notice?
What's that?
Ask Greg if he would give the notice. The notice of the special meeting.
Oh, yeah. Chief, we're going to need to have you send the notice of the special meeting out tomorrow so that we make the deadline, okay?
Question for Mr. Bradley.
The question is, the meeting is next Monday, starting at 8 o'clock. What time would we want you to be here to give comments before the closed meeting? That's the question? And you should be here at the start of the meeting. Before we go to closed session, we give everybody an opportunity to comment. So come 5 or 10 minutes early. It is the 16th of February, next Monday, 8 p.m. All right, so we now open the room to public comment. I do want to read a board policy, and I want us to be extra careful about this because I don't want anybody to get sued. And this is out of our policy, section 5030.43. No oral presentation shall include charges or complaints against any district employee, regardless of whether or not the employee is I'm worried about getting sued. Do you want me to ditch it? All right. Well, I've been advised to skip that one, okay? So we're going to go right into public comment. Can you hear me now, okay? So I first want to say that I understand everybody in this room is upset about the news everybody's heard lately. I can tell you there's nobody in this room more upset about it than I am. All of the board. I'd appreciate no laughter, folks. You know, if you can't come here and act with respect and have an adult discussion, it's not worth being here. All right? You don't believe me, that's fine. But it's upsetting to me. I'm the president of the board. If you think it's not upsetting to me, then you must think I'm not a human being. And, you know, we all have, you know, our problems dealing with this. What we're going to try to do for you is explain how this process works. I understand it looks to a lot of you like there's been some sort of cover-up, like we're trying to hide behind the law. So what we're going to do our best for you tonight is to explain, to the extent the law allows us, what has gone on here, what our legal restrictions are, and what we intend to do about the situation. So, Pat, I'm going to let you take over from there for the time being.
So let me begin, and I understand this is an emotionally charged moment. Oops, I understand this is an emotionally charged moment for everybody in the room. And I think that we want to make sure that I will stand up. I want to make sure, can you hear me if I just
You
talk
need the
without
microphone.
mic?
Hold the mic.
That is a good idea. Kiss the microphone, they say. So, we have our counsel here to help. No? We have our counsel here? Okay. We have our counsel here to help us with this and to help the community with this because, believe it or not, in this particular area, when it comes to dealing with police officers, I'm sorry? Okay, when it comes to dealing with police officers, there are very strict requirements of the law and very many constraints on what is said and what can be said and what can't be said. So we're trying to operate within those parameters. I don't know if that's a sign. I also want to explain exactly what the roles are of the various people involved. So our job as the board is to evaluate the police chief and the general manager. That's our job. We manage the chief of police, general manager, the chief of police manages the police officers. The board has no say in discipline that is imposed on police officers. We can't change those decisions. All we can do is evaluate how the chief handled that particular situation. If we don't think that he handled it appropriately, then we have to decide what is the appropriate action to take. So there's been some confusion about what the board was supposed to do and what the chief was supposed to do. And I just want to make sure that it's clear to everyone that when the report came in about the incident, the chief reported it to the members of the board at that time. That was in May of 2014. We are not allowed at that point, from that point on, to know about the investigation, to know about the discipline. And the reason for that is because we ultimately sit as the appellate board. If the discipline imposed by the chief is appealed by the officer, we are the board that hears that appeal. So we have to remain neutral like a judge. And so as a result, we don't hear about the investigation until it's completed. We don't hear about the discipline until it's imposed. Once the officer decides that he's not going to appeal the discipline, then we're informed. So tonight is the first time that we've heard about the discipline that was imposed. That's the way it works. Our job now is to evaluate whether we believe that the chief of police handled that in the way he should have, and if he didn't, then what actions we as a board will take as his manager. I hope that's clear, and our counsel's here to define it further if anybody has any other questions.
I have a question. That is what, when you heard about it today, even if you don't get into what is going to be done.
Why don't you come up and talk, because I think now we go to public comments. I'm not here to answer questions. I really am here to listen. So, no, I mean, that wasn't why I came to the mic, is what I'm saying.
What I asked about and what I would like to know is why this extraordinary delay. Yes. If they heard about this in May, then maybe they couldn't go into what happened, but it seems to me that in June, July, August, September, whatever, they would ask, what's happening? We're paying your salary all the time. Tell us what's happening in this. And indeed, they shouldn't have been satisfied with nothing happening, which apparently was the case. Nothing seemed to ever even come out about this until some reporter from somewhere else came in here and found out about it. Of course, we have a crusading newspaper with a crusading editor, and he should have crusaded into finding it out. But anyway, that's what I really think this board, you can't keep hiding behind the fact that, this legal stuff is too much. You really get down to the fact that you didn't do anything. Why?
Sir, could you state your name for the record, please?
Richard Muller.
Thank you, Mr. Muller.
I have a brief comment following that up. It seemed that Reno had no problem figuring this out. I mean, other people have already been charged in this matter. Why couldn't we figure it out? We had most of the witnesses to the whole situation, didn't we? Thank you, Mark Weiss.
Thank you. Could you please state your name for the record when you come up? Thank you.
My name's Simon Brockman. I have a couple questions and a couple comments. Is that better? So sorry. Okay. My name's Simon Brockman. I have a couple questions and a couple comments. First of all, it saddens me that it took an incident like this to get the community out here. I applaud everyone that's out here, but I wish we would come out here more frequently to be involved in our community, because our strength is our community, not this board. Second of all, one of my strong motivations for living in this community and running for office is I believe that we, as older people, sorry, I see a lot of gray hair out there, I've got it here, we owe it to our children to leave a better place than what we received, and that is what we need to do here as well. okay? Thank you. My question, Chief, Chief?
Yes.
Hi. I have a question. I'm just wondering, based on this delay of 9 months or whatever it is, didn't we put the policeman in question, his integrity, should he be called as a witness in question, with this charge, with this incident being public knowledge via the police? Couldn't any attorney then question his credibility? So in essence, our whole community was put in jeopardy because one potential witness has lost their credibility. That's my question. And my final comment is, I think the real issue here is management, and not to make a pun, but we're talking about performance here.
Go ahead.
I would like you to please explain why we are skipping the item in the procedures which keeps us from all getting sued. That seemed to be something that you started on and then didn't continue with. I'm wondering why it is that we're not doing that.
Well, I'll answer that.
And what the section is.
I'll answer that. There is a section, it's 5030.43 in the P&P. There's concern that if you, I'll read it to you. It says, no oral presentation shall include charges or complaints against any district employee, regardless of whether or not the employee is identified in the presentation by name or by another reference which tends to identify. All charges or complaints against employees shall be submitted to the Board of Directors under provisions contained in policy number 1030, which is a procedure for submitting written comment. We would like people to express themselves. There's been a little bit of discussion here about what the risk is to allowing people to express themselves, but I think, politically people here feel very strongly. There's obviously a set of significant issues, so we're going to go with everybody being able to express themselves. I do want to answer quickly that question. We went through the procedure that is legally provided for in investigating an incident like this. There's no further opportunity, as I understand it, and Kim, you can correct me if you want, there's no further opportunity to cross-examine the officer on items that appeared in the press.
Hi, I'm Kath Delaney. I live on Lake Drive, a Kensington resident. First, I just want to thank all of you for your public service. I know it's an incredible amount of time that you all give to the community, and there's so much I want to say. I don't even know where to begin. I'll try to be as brief as possible. First, I'm a daughter of a policeman, and I really understand the tenet of a policeman's weapon. So I'm very concerned about the issue of the policeman's weapon. I'm also the mother, and there are many mothers here, very concerned that one of our police officers was involved with prostitution. And the little bit of research I've done about prostitution and policemen, it is very complex, the issues here that we're grappling with. And I think we have to be very mindful to try not to hurt each other, because I don't think what we're talking about tonight is going anywhere quickly. I think we have the cats out of the bag, if you will. And I think there are many, many issues that we're concerned about as residents and as parents. But my issue being a mother, that it's very difficult for me, and I've had many women call me in the last few days, to know that we have a police officer that has such lack of judgment. And I don't want a police officer around our school and around my daughter that has been a part of this behavior. And I'm sure people feel this way. Again, growing up I'm a Delaney from New York. I know police officers, many generations. I know how hard they work. And I'm very nervous right now. I mean, I was just moved to be here tonight and to talk. And then the last thing I want to address is basically the inherent conflict of interest in the way that our citizenry is run in our community. That it seems to me that there is an inherent conflict of interest between our police officers and how our police officers are managed and what is asked of you as a board. And if I was sitting on the board, I sure as hell wouldn't want that kind of liability. So I hope all of us can come together as a community and move forward, and if that means to disband our police force and to join another police force in our community, so we have more transparency and more accountability. We cannot, in 2015, be run by a small group of people who maybe really want to do a good job, but power has gone awry here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ava Schoing.
Can I just, 1 second, can I interrupt you? Can I get some idea of how many people want to come up and comment, like raise hands? All right, I'm going to ask people to hold their comments to 5 minutes. That's actually in our rules. I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak. I don't normally do that, but we don't normally have a meeting this full of people who want to comment. So I'm going to ask Lynn over there to keep time on comments, and please try to keep to 5 minutes if you can, okay?
Surely.
And I think you're doing fine. I think you're being very succinct so far in what I've heard and very persuasive. So go ahead.
All right, thank you. My name is Ava Schoing, and I've lived here for 5 years. I love this community, but I'm very concerned about the leadership I'm seeing here. And I would like to connect the discussion we've had about the police to the budget issue, because I think that's a very important connection. I would like to know why it is, or am I informed correctly when I'm under the, I have heard that the police officer who is under investigation was leading the negotiations for the police with the board. Could that possibly be true? And if that is the case, why was the board allowing this to happen? I'm also wondering why, at a time when there is such issues with the police, are you proposing a 4-year locked budget where the police budget is a very, very large part of that budget? How could you possibly consider doing that with large benefits, very generous increases, and who else is getting a guaranteed salary for 4 years? I just do not understand that kind of oversight.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Louder? All right. I'll kiss the microphone. Okay, we won't check this for bacteria afterwards, but good evening. My name is Gerren Corbett. First, let me just say I don't envy any of your responsibilities this week. On the other hand, I also don't appreciate the poor reputation that we're seeing of Kensington in the media over this past week, and the reputation that we're acquiring. In the nearly 3 years that I've been a Kensington homeowner, I've been really saddened by the level of divisiveness and discord in our beautiful little hamlet. When relatives from back east, which they're now coming very often because there's about 20 feet of snow there, but when they come out to visit, they say, this place is beautiful. This must be the most peaceful place to live. Sadly, if you just stay in the car, that is the case. But once you start getting closer to some of the public policy issues in our little district, that is no longer the case, I have found. What has struck me is there's not only a general lack of oversight, our budgets are made up with, unfortunately, very optimistic assumptions, if that. There seems to be a fundamental lack of long-term planning, and personnel management has been inadequate at best and dysfunctional at worst. So I have 3 very quick and simple recommendations. We simply must immediately separate the role of GM and Chief of Police. We've already heard the words inherent conflict of interest, and I think that about sums that up. The job is too complex, the complexities of today are too much, and it's just not working. Second, unfortunately, and this is not a specific complaint, but it's a fact, the GM has, I think, lost the community's confidence to be effective. The handling of the Reno events magnifies that view. That's not the only factor, though. The contract has lapsed, and I know there'll be conversation next week, but in my humble opinion, it should not be renewed. And finally, we simply have to delay the MOU and get some better outside facts, get some new, fresh look at the numbers, at the assumptions that go into them, because a budget, a 4-year budget that is full of a lot of very rosy assumptions that ends in deficit, even with all of those assumptions. No cost increases for non-police, no cost of living increases for non-police. That's just not sustainable and doesn't make sense. So I urge you to heed these recommendations. I know this is a painful evening. I admire all of you for your public service and time, but we have to do better. Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me? My name is Laura Chick. I'm a newbie. I've been here just about exactly 4 years, and I've been incognito from my prior life because I earned my stripes, and you've earned my respect for your public service, and I hope all of us give them our respect, even if we're angry and even if we disagree with what they have been doing or what they will do. I agree with everything the 3 prior speakers have said, and I don't believe in repeating. But I am a former elected official myself. I have a reputation of being a fiscal watchdog and a taxpayer watchdog. And I moved here proud to be part of this community and have wanted to stay anonymous and incognito. But what's been going on the past week or so, along with some of you, has pulled me in. This is not for me about a particular city employee or a particular police officer. It's about a dysfunctional government. And you have lost the confidence of too many people who live here and whom you serve. You are us and we are you. So I'm pleased with the actions you took in closed session, and I really hope that we all stay involved and that you move forward on some of the things that have been discussed for too long. Transparency, separating these 2 separate offices from general manager and chief of police, and civility. Thank you.
My name's Steve Bates, for those that don't know. Little history lesson. My family's been here since 1925. I moved here in 1985. And these problems seem to have come up the last 10, 15 years, maybe, 1990. It's a matter of, again, what people have said before, I agree, public trust. It's a matter of things going on. Now, the history lesson I forgot to mention was that in the old days, and how this worked was we're the employer, we're the homeowner, we are the employer. We elect you guys to do the best for us, and I appreciate your hard work. If for some reason, and people get busy, things kind of get, out of whack, but they keep getting out of whack, you got to stem the tide somehow. So the other person involved, it was the GM/police chief. When you look at what used to be with Mr. Bray, William Bray, he was more of a professor style. He was behind a desk. He wore the tweed jacket, if you guys remember, with the patches on the sleeves. And he worked for us. Yes. Did he manage the police? Yes. Do we need a separation of jobs? No. We just need the person in the job to be working for the neighbors, not for the police themselves. And that's not to say we should not be good to our police officers. It's to say that the bottom line is we're the employer. you guys are doing the job for us, and that person in the GM chief job should be doing his best for us, not for contracts for his guys, not whatever, doing numbers that may or may not be true. And I'm not saying anything's going on necessarily, I'm just saying a lot of stuff is fishy. And I think that's what most people in here, fishy. There you go. And I think that's what most people feel. And, so I hope we can fix this rather than sack the whole thing. Going to El Cerrito is not the answer. They were broke just 5 years ago, okay? They're not in good shape. We, I believe, from what I've heard, we do a little coverage in the hillsides. Well, we're in the hillsides. They spend most of their time in the flats with commercial problems, burglaries, stick-ups, etc. In El Cerrito, they border Richmond. They have a lot of issues. If you think we'll get good service for El Cerrito, I would sort of doubt that. So I say fix this thing. And that's really your job, which I appreciate. Thank you.
My name is Leslie Reckler. Better?
A little closer to the mic, please.
My name is Leslie Reckler. I live at 33 Edwin Drive. I thank you all for your service. I understand the privacy laws that surround employee and especially police employment. I know that many questions can only be asked and answered in closed session, and I also understand that some questions we will never get the answers to. With that said, there are many unanswered questions that seem fair game to answer publicly. I want to know, does the department have a functional internal affairs staff? Please identify that staff and the practices and procedures followed for an internal affairs investigation. What is the policy on suspension with pay during an investigation? I realize sadly that suspension without pay is not likely. Did the department retain a qualified outside public employer defense counsel to advise the investigator? If not, why not? Why did the chief of police not recuse himself and hire an outside investigator to expedite the process and remove the inherent conflict of interest between chief investigating union president during contract negotiations during an election season? Was Barrow or any of the Kensington officers on a paid trip to Reno for training or some other event during the date range in question? Were public funds involved? I believe I read they were 100% off duty, but public funds and trainings were not addressed. You can be off duty after a training. Since we have a provision to call special closed meetings, why was one not done prior to tonight? The investigation was closed on January 12th. We had to wait until tonight, a month later, to be apprised of the investigation and disciplinary actions. Please retain an independent outside investigator to perform an internal audit regarding the process used in this investigation. The investigator should answer whether there were any delays relating to the timing of the election, whether the department has adequate general orders and procedures for the handling of disciplinary investigations. If you do not hire an independent outside investigator, please explain your reasoning as to why not. I think it is fair that these questions be answered on or before next month's meeting. If there are questions that you can't answer due to privacy laws, note that. Officer Barrow must be removed from the force. He cannot police effectively. His actions were so egregious and he showed such poor judgment that he has lost the respect of the entire community. I can't have him around my children. I can't have him near that school. I can't have him near my home. I find it appalling that he was allowed to keep working because the chief thought he posed no risk to the community. We pay him to uphold the law absolutely every moment of every day, 24/7, 365. Because he is a police officer, he must walk on water. He's the shining example of law enforcement. It goes with the territory. He broke the law. He does not represent the policing values we want on our force or on any force. How do I explain to my 13-year-old son why he is still working? Finally, do not approve any contracts, memorandums of understanding with any officer or the chiefs of police until we further understand the events surrounding the incident of May 23rd. I look forward to these responses. Thank you.
Let me, can I just say one thing? Those are excellent questions, and we will do our absolute best to answer them by the next meeting.
Leslie, would you mind leaving your memo with the chief or with us?
We have it on tape, but we'll take a look at every single one of their excellent questions. Thank you.
I'm Donna Stanton, and I've lived here for about 17 years. I love this community. I'm going to keep it very short because most everything else that I would want to say has been said. But I am very concerned that this was kept down, kept without our knowing. I realize you have some limitations, but to have this not brought out before our elections is, to me, appalling. That we had no important information to add to when we had 3 vacancies available for our choosing, and to not have the accurate information. Thank you.
Good evening. First, I want to say thank you to the board members for all the work they do. I know how much time it takes. And, oh yes, my name is David Burgin. Oh, can we turn this thing up?
You really have to get close to the mic. I'm sorry.
Is there any other electrical engineer in the house? Okay, my name is David Burgin. I'm a retired engineer. I moved here in 1958 with my parents, and I now live in that house since my parents passed. So I've been involved with this community for a very long time. All the board members and many of you on next door are aware of my thoughts, my beliefs, and about this entire situation. But there's a couple items that I want to mention. I'm not very good at speaking out loud, by the way. Because of the problems with the police department and the board and the way they've been set up originally, I think it's time that we really should look at the El Cerrito option. We do have that same relationship for our fire department, and to the best of my knowledge, that arrangement is working fine. We have the same fire trucks, we have the same building, and the same response time.
Let him speak, please.
The same response time. So I think the El Cerrito option is something that should be considered at this time. I also suggest that any actions with MOU be tabled, and that both Barrow and Harmon be terminated legally, according to the proper procedures, of course. And I have one last question which has not been answered to me. I understand that there was a special meeting of the board on February 9th, but I have not been able to get any information regarding the minutes of that board or any details of it. And I just thought I would throw that out as a question to the board. Where are the minutes for that meeting?
Can we answer that question right now? Was there a meeting on the 9th?
Yeah, I answered Mr. Bergman in an email. There was no meeting February 9th.
No, this was not a finance meeting. It is my understanding that there actually was a meeting at that time.
Who was there?
I have no idea.
Neither do
Well,
we.
Okay. Thank you very much for listening to me. And again, thank you to the board. You do an important job, a very difficult one, especially at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Barbara, can you hear me? I'm Barbara Steinberg. Thank you. I'm Barbara Steinberg. I've lived here in Kensington since the early 50s. I've loved this community. I love the pardon? I've loved this community. It's been very good to me. The people have been wonderful. The communication has been great. One of the most important things is I've felt safe. And I felt safe because of the police department. The police, I do not feel, I feel that we should not forget and I should not be lost how safe the police department and what the services have been for the police department to give us. This incident with Officer Barrow, again, I feel it would be a mistake to rush to judgment. I think the only thing perfect about any of us is our hindsight. We all have character flaws. We have things that we've done that we've been very, very sorry about. We just need to have the whole thing reevaluated. I am sure this is the process that's being done now. But I'd like to end up with just applauding the police department, in fact, and how safe I've been able to feel with your services.
My name is, can you hear me? My name is Rob Furman, and I've lived here for 5.5 years and love this town. Upon its invitation, I joined the board of the 200-member Kensington Property Owners Association just 3 weeks ago, and I find those people to be highly capable and sincere in their efforts to help improve our community. I've been asked to read the property owner's statement for this meeting, and so I'm speaking on the association's behalf. I guess that's better if I swallow this thing. The original purpose of this meeting, as I understand it, was to vote on the MOU. The MOU is a funny name for a contract with the police officers, which is locked in for 4 years and is the largest budget item for Kensington. It was negotiated between the Police Officers Association and the board before the November election. The Kensington Property Owners Association cannot support the current MOU, but would like to support an acceptable agreement for police salary and benefits that fits within the district's means. Members of the board, there is obviously a crisis of public confidence in Kensington's management due to the lack of professionalism in the budgeting process and due to the recent revelations about some members of the police force. The Property Owners Association has commented extensively about the serious financial risk faced by Kensington because the budget cannot support the proposed MOU throughout its entire term. The budget projections presented in November and January included significant errors, inadequate examination of assumptions, use of restricted revenue for the general fund, and updates and corrections that only made the MOU seem affordable on paper, meaning that the MOU's cost could easily exceed revenue by year 4. We believe the January Finance Committee was unable to adequately address budget assumptions and their policy implications. For these reasons, the community would be better served if the MOU is required to reopen at any time during its term before the district has to dip into reserves to fund operations. In addition, the credibility of the negotiations appears to be undermined given that a chief negotiator for the police was under personnel investigation during the negotiations. We respect the privacy rights of the officer under investigation. Nonetheless, legitimate questions may be asked. Why did the board negotiate with personnel who were under investigation? Did the board or the police chief general manager consult outside counsel regarding negotiating the MOU with personnel under investigation? Why didn't the board preserve its decision-making flexibility post-contract discussion by using a separate professional negotiator? In summary, the MOU action in its current form should be continued, meaning not passed now. This district needs a professionally produced projection that can convincingly support the MOU with a reopening clause to preserve reserves. To regain confidence in Kensington's leadership, the board must engage the community respectfully and bring in experts to assist consideration of options for delivering high quality and affordable district services. The Property Owners Association looks forward to supporting these efforts. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Jan Burson, and louder. I'm Jan Burson, and I have lived in Kensington since 1974. And as many of you probably know, as recently as I guess it was yesterday or the day before, when I asked a question of some of the board members, one of the board members wrote back saying, ignore him. So I would like to ask a question of each of you board members publicly, and you could either say, ignore him, I'm not going to answer, or you could answer. I think that's fair. So, to all of the directors, on the district website there was posted an announcement in latest news called Update from the District. It summarized the investigation of the officer involved in the Reno incident and the description of the process. So I'm going to ask each one of you, when was each one of you made aware of this press release? Ms. Cordova?
Can I answer first, Jan?
No.
Well, no, I'd like to do
I'll
it.
ask.
Can I? It's my opportunity. You can have your opportunity when it comes. Go ahead.
Thank you for yielding, Mr. President. Mr. Burson, I learned of the announcement from a print reporter that called me on my cell phone.
Okay. Ms. Gillette?
I sent the...
It was yesterday afternoon at approximately 3:30, and I was asked to provide a comment on the press release, and I said, what press release?
So you didn't know anything about the press release
Yes.
until the reporter called you?
No.
Okay, Ms. Gillette?
I'm just looking up my email because I'm the one who sent it out to the board members as soon as... I am looking on my email because I'm the one who sent it out to the board members as soon as it was finalized. So as soon as I get my email, I'll let you know.
Okay.
It was slightly before or right around the time Ms. Cordova just mentioned, but let me find out.
And Mr. Welsh?
Sorry, I'm looking in my email because I am the person who sent the email with the update attached to all the board members as soon as the press release was finalized. I will look in my email and see what time I sent that email.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Does that mean that not all the board members were involved in finalizing the press release?
The press release was worked on by certain board members and the outside counsel.
Why weren't all the board members involved?
That would violate the Brown Act, for one thing.
No, it takes, how many directors were involved in putting together this press release?
It was Pat Gillette, myself, and outside counsel.
2 out of the 3 board members? Out of 5?
Yes.
Okay. And when did you learn about it, Mr. Welsh?
First of all, I want to apologize to you, Jan.
I'm not asking for that.
I know you're not, but I'm going to give you an apology anyway, whether you want it or not.
Do you want to tell the audience here what you're apologizing for?
Yeah, I made a disparaging remark in email to you yesterday.
And why did you do that?
Well, it goes back to when you and I talked and we didn't get
along.
along.
When you called me thin-skinned?
What's that?
When I accused you of badgering me and you called me thin-skinned, you mean that conversation?
Well, if you remember, I went to your house and we had a
conversation. Yes, I invited you to my house.
Yes, and I wanted to speak to you because... All right.
So, can you answer my question? Is that...
Happily, sure.
Is this difficult?
No.
Okay, please answer my question.
I got a draft copy of the press release. Pat and I were looking at last-minute copies. It looked like it was finished. Louder! I got a draft copy of the press release. It looked like it was finished. I got a call from a reporter from the San Jose Mercury News who is very much interested in, this meeting, and I thought, well, I got the press release. I don't want to hide anything. Why don't I just send it to her? And so when I got the draft, I sent it to her.
So you got the press release from whom?
It was either from outside counsel or Pat. I can't remember. Is there some reason why this matters?
Is anybody home?
Is there some reason why this matters?
Yes, it matters to me.
What is it?
It matters to a lot of people to know what the hell is going on. Mr. Tooms, when did you learn about this press release?
I have the email right here, and I got it at 4:37 p.m. yesterday afternoon.
So after it was released?
I'm sorry, pardon me?
After it was released?
I got an email with a copy of the press release. I have no idea when it was formally released to the press. I'm just telling you when I got it by email.
Okay.
I've answered the question, I think.
Thank you. Rochelle, when did you learn about it?
I learned about it yesterday at approximately 5 p.m. when Thomas Peel called me for comment.
Thank you. And Mr. Tooms, the last question. Did you provide any input for the press release?
No.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is John Lipscomb, and that's going to be a tough act to follow. And I'd like to read a short statement I've prepared. I've lived in Kensington the majority of my childhood and most of my adult life. Since my parents moved here in the 1970s, this community hasn't changed much in terms of demographics or for land use development. Young's Market is still where it should be. The youth hut in which this meeting is being held tonight is exactly the same as it was in the 1980s when I was a Cub Scout. I've always considered Kensington a very safe place to live, especially considering our close proximity to Richmond, Oakland, and Berkeley. Kensington is the kind of place where I would like to raise a family one day. Because of the good people who make up our community and the high standard of living we've all become accustomed to, is a direct result of the hard work of our efficient and competent board of directors throughout the years and our outstanding police force who keep our city safe. I'd like to state that our very low crime rates are a direct result of our police force, especially through their efforts of Sergeant Keith Barrow and Chief Greg Harmon. It is reflected in the latest published FBI crime statistics that Kensington has very few violent crimes. Criminals know that if you commit a crime in Kensington, you're bound to get pinched by one of our officers and generally head to the north or south of our city. Based on the latest violent crime statistics published by the FBI for 2013, the latest statistics, Kensington is safer than the affluent Piedmont and also Sausalito, the latter with a comparable population size, and quite a bit safer than our neighbors El Cerrito and Berkeley. With my father's passing a few years back and my mother living alone, I can sleep comfortably knowing that our town is protected by Sergeant Barrow and other Kensington peace officers. It seems a lot of residents are very concerned about the incident in Reno that has been in the newspapers the past few days. I am concerned too because the Kensington Police Department has always been, for me, very important for the peace and security of our community. I don't know if these newspapers articles tell the true story, or the whole story for that matter, or what happened in Reno. It's not unheard of for newspapers to get things wrong, or for authors to have corrupt agendas. I do know that Sergeant Barrow has been on the Kensington Police Force for many years and has served our community well. I can't think of anyone else I would want to respond to my mother's house should there be a prowler, unless of course it's Chief Harmon. I think that before we rush to judgment based on biased newspaper articles and start demanding that people resign or be fired, we should let the board do their job we elected them to do. That's to conduct an independent investigation and find out the true facts, then make a decision. Anything less would be a disservice to all of us. I believe the board is more than competent and has the best interest of all Kensington residents at heart. It's a mistake to contract out our police services if you want to maintain a high level of safety in Kensington. Thank you for all your service.
Hi, my name is Richard Carlson. I've been a resident of Kensington for 32 years, and as part of my employment, I used to handle police disciplinary matters in behalf of the Alameda County Sheriff's Office for 18 years. So I'm well aware of the issues surrounding this situation. I can tell you first, I want to congratulate your board. I realize you have a very difficult issue. Moreover, I realize that you are not and cannot be involved in the day-to-day discipline of officers. That's beyond your purview. That's up to the chief in this instance. I don't know why the chief, in this particular reason, decided upon the discipline that he did, but that is his decision. What I would say is going forward, you have two big issues. One is the discipline of officers, and you can, through your law firm, Hanson Bridget, come up with disciplinary procedures that you expect to be fulfilled by those who work for you, such that if you believe certain standards of conduct are not met, then those should be adhered to, and you can require those things to happen. Second of all, I believe that insofar as this police contract, there is an inherent conflict of interest. You can't have a peace officer as your general manager negotiating with peace officers, and this is no poor reflection on the chief. I want to make this clear, because he is going to be impacted by those negotiations. In my opinion, you need a professional organization. There are several that negotiate contracts and report back to you as to what is an appropriate contract, what are appropriate contracts in other jurisdictions, so that you can look, compare, and contrast. I also believe that you need an independent general manager to report back to you. You are a citizen board, you all have jobs, you don't have time to do with the day-to-day things that need oversight. And therefore, I think you need to look at, moving forward, how you're going to avoid these situations in the future. I don't think, well, I'm quite sure, there isn't anything that you can do about Officer Barrow at this point, save contract out the services somewhere else. I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. Others may. The police department, the entire time I've lived here for my 32 years, has been wonderful. I'm very pleased with those services. But I do think that these type of situations are going to arise if the board does not have an organizational structure that allows you to get timely information, that allows you to be able to manage the situation given your citizens board. This is a lot of work. This is a lot of effort on all of you. and I encourage you to work together. I think you do and have done a wonderful job. But going forward, you need to put in place the people and the structure to allow you and future board members to govern more effectively. I don't see this as your problem. I don't even see this as Chief Harmon's problem. But you have got a governmental structure in place that is inefficient. You need to change that. Thank you.
Take this to this day.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I echo heartily the very many points that have been made tonight. I think that the COP and GM need to be separated into two separate facilities, two separate persons, for obvious reasons. Some kind of a merger, some kind of a fix for the fact that we cannot control some of our police officers. I don't know how many were there with this other officer, but there were other people in Reno with him. So they also knew what was going on. We have a police chief who has been, what's the word? He's been accused of covering up and inflating crime statistics, big time. He had to take out Joel Kusa's paper, a whole page, telling why he inflated these crime statistics. This cover-up right now, I don't know what else you can call it when we have an election that happened earlier. You guys all knew this. Nobody was talking. Nobody came to us and said, well, you might want to think about this because these people are running for the board who will then interface with the chief and the police. You cannot push through an MOU. You cannot do that. And if you try to, we're going to stop you. I was gratified to hear the board refer to the P&P tonight as what they were basing their decisions on for some things, because we went through this with the old board and we're told that the P&P is simply a list of suggestions. They're not governed by that. So I'm glad to see that that has come into play now. I'm really angry. Thank you very much.
I'd like to just answer Mr. Burson's question because he asked me when I sent the email. I finally found it. I apologize for taking so long. It was 4:36 yesterday afternoon, which I believe is right around the time Ms. Cordova got the call. The email was sent out to the board members at 4:36 yesterday afternoon by me. This contained the update or the press release. I believe that's about the same time that Ms. Cordova said she got the call from Mr. Peel. That's because Mr. Welsh had given a reporter a copy of the press release before it was finalized.
Hi, my name's Deborah Lane. I've lived in this community for about 20 years. I'm an architect. I originally worked on the community center in 2010, and I'm not an expert on any of this going on right now, and I know everybody's very concerned about this recent situation, which I am too. But originally this was supposed to be a finance committee meeting, a budget meeting, and a meeting.
It's our monthly general meeting. We had our finance committee meeting back at the end of January.
Louder.
I'm sorry, I was just getting her chronology right. Tonight
Right.
is our monthly general meeting. We had a finance committee meeting in the end of January. So this is our monthly regular
I
meeting.
understand, and I also have an email that originally there was supposed to also be input about the budget. I want to be short. Right. Okay. What I am concerned about is that in addition to the police department, we are stewards of a huge piece of property that is very important. Already, there's a building that has sustained substantial damage because it was not kept up properly. The drainage issue was not kept after, and now the building will probably have to be torn down. There is not enough consideration for money going toward the park. And the whole situation with this building and the park, which has been going on since 2010, when there really could have been money to do the plan in 2010, has really been aggravating for somebody watching it as closely as I have. It has been wasteful time-wise, money-wise, consultant-wise. And when we consider what we are going to devote toward our police department, we should at least also consider our other responsibilities, especially of stewards of this park and the buildings in this park.
A. Stevens Dilk. I prepared my talk last week, but I'm going to stick with it. It's a slight diversion, but I think it will be of interest to you. Many of you who voted for Measure G in 2010 thought that an additional police officer was needed to maintain the department's excellent standards, and one was hired 2 years later. I don't recall that there were problems with service or crime during the interim, but that's not what I want to comment on. The general manager in his November report said that to save money, the police department could delay filling a vacancy, but overtime cost would increase. However, annual records show no real correlation between the number of officers and overtime. For example, the current projection for overtime cost is 4.6% of salary costs. In the years immediately before the additional officer was hired, the projection was 4.5%. But what's more important, when there were only 9 officers, the actual cost of overtime fluctuated, but averaged 6% of salary. Now with 10 officers, overtime cost is 5.9% of salary, and that's on top of the salary increase and still significantly over budget by 30%. Perhaps the general manager should meet with the chief of police to see why overtime repeatedly exceeds projection and what can be done. According to transparentcalifornia.org, in 2013, one high-ranking officer clocked more than twice as much overtime as any other, accounting for more than 35% of total overtime cost and increasing his salary by 20%. Managing overtime, which is on course to cost $55,000 to $60,000 this year, will help in mitigating the district's financial problems.
Hi, I just wanted to clarify an email I got from a board member saying we will be discussing the financial health of the district. This was before. And how the 3 different charges of the board, garbage, police, and community services, interact and are accommodated in the general manager's long-term budget. So that's what I was told was going to be happening. I know it's changed, but this was from a board member.
Senate.
Good evening, I'm Ted Blankenberg. I live on Ardmore Road. It's really heartening to see such a concerned citizenry out here. I was a little bit, must admit to being a little sad and surprised at some of the rudeness that was exhibited by the crowd when the board came in. I mean, there was booing and hissing. I thought we left that behind in the 8th grade. Maybe they still do it in Crimea. But I'm here to speak about my family's direct involvement with the police department. Unfortunately, we've had 2 instances when, one of my kids went missing, and Chief Harmon and Sergeant Barrow were organizing a search party, found her. She had unfortunately been paralyzed, but had they not found her, she would have been, had they not found her promptly, she would not have survived. And that's pretty good police work. So they have my full confidence. I have daughters who live in the community. I have a wife. I see utterly no problem with them being policed by the folks on the force right now.
Hi, my name is Bob Treppa. I've been here about 15 years in Kensington, and I have not had any interaction with the police department. I received a letter from KPOA. Thank you, whoever sent this. Maybe it's the first time that I've received literature about the city when it was not an election. So that's why I'm here today, because I thought I saw this. But it also ties into the other comments of today, and that is, I see this as probably a pretty cush job for policemen. We don't have the crime. We're not Richmond. We're not Berkeley. We're not Oakland. I think we should look at the police department here as the Oakland A's. That's a great bunch of rookies. We get them at a good cost. When they finally mature and are ready to go on, they move to the Yankees. So, part of that is that you need a great coach if you're going to have that type of staff. This letter mentioned the idea of waiting for 2 officers to resign or to retire. Retire. When officers retire from a public agency, that public agency also continues to contribute on many levels. And this place up here should not be the elephant's graveyard. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. I'm Kevin Padian. I've lived in the community for 25 years. I've never had any involvement whatsoever with civic affairs because everything seemed to be running fine until last year. And then it became clear that things were not what they seemed, and that we had a lot of conflict in this community that I didn't understand. And so I started to look into it, and I have some questions tonight because I'm not sure about a couple of things. Mr. Welsh, you mentioned up top that the disciplinary process for this officer is concluded. And so you said there was a disposition in the case. What is the disposition?
We cannot legally talk about it.
You can't legally talk about it. Okay.
We are not allowed to talk about it legally. We cannot say what the discipline was.
And when can that be? After the discipline is accepted, then you can explain.
It's private. We can't reveal it.
Okay. So that's interesting. So it's been.
It's the law, Mr.
No, we get it. But we also have been given to understand from published reports that the officer in question is or will be placed on suspension. I know you can't comment on that. I do want people to understand that a suspension is for a maximum of 30 days, if I'm understanding the police report procedure manual possible. Is that right, Mr. Harmon?
Suspension can last to any amount of days that are determined.
Okay, well, Mr. Harmon says it can last any number of days determined, but I believe that in the manual it says 30 days, but I could be wrong. I have another question. We have 2 board members who are negotiating the MOU, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And of the 3 continuing board members, all 3 are attorneys, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I just have a question here, but if 2 board members are negotiating a contract and there is an agreement on that contract, and then this contract is returned to the full board, do not those 2 board members have to vote yes on the contract or risk a lawsuit for negotiation in bad faith?
No.
Can you please explain, because I know you're the labor lawyer.
We act only on the board's approval. That's all we do. We didn't have independent authority to make an offer, to accept an offer, to do anything without coming back and talking to the full board, which is what we did. We took our marching orders explicitly from the board of directors at the time. They told us what to offer. We came back, reported what the response was. They told us how to go back. And until the full board approves the contract, there is no agreement.
So you're saying, Ms. Gillette, that after agreeing with the Police Officers Association, coming back to the board, you and Mr. Tooms could still vote no?
Absolutely.
And do you...
We're the mouthpiece for the board.
Okay.
That's all.
So then if you did that, you would not risk in any way any kind of legal action for negotiating in bad faith?
No.
Okay. I'm glad for that opinion.
We actually asked our counsel about that to be sure.
Okay. That's important to know. Because if it were the case, and if people did that, then we'd be in the situation that only a minority of 1 person on the remaining 3 would have to approve the contract in order for it to work. So
I can tell you that I don't think this board would approve a contract that all of us sit and agree on.
Ms. Gillette said she didn't think that the board would approve a contract that all of them didn't agree on.
I respectfully disagree with that comment.
Okay, thank you for that insight.
Hi, my name is Deanna, Kensington resident. I would like to thank the Kensington Property Owner Association for sending out the... I wanted to thank the I'm afraid of germs. I wanted to thank the Kensington Property Owner Association for sending out us the financial information. It was very helpful. I'm sorry we're not talking about it. But what I would like to do is take a minute just to talk about maybe another victim in this situation. So I wrote just something quick. When I heard the news regarding our own police officer, I was appalled. When my mind went to the scene that was created by the news, I couldn't help but think of Melissa. Melissa was my CASA child. CASA is a court-appointed advocate for children in the foster care system. I was a big sister to her, but also a liaison between social work and the court system. Melissa grew up from age 5 to 18 in a series of group homes. At 17, she ran away to Reno and started working there for about a week until she ran into trouble with a real pimp. Thankfully, she was able to get help from a police officer. He was able to get her away from the situation and back to her group home here. When I heard the news of our police officer, I couldn't think of how degrading the Officers Act really was. In a situation that he could have helped an obviously victim of sexual exploitation, he chose to show this woman... He chose to show this woman that he was just as much part of the problem. I am appalled. The officer and the chief who chose to shove this situation under the rug should be held accountable and to do community service with sexually exploited women. I ask that the board hold the chief accountable for his employees.
My name is Mark Bell, 14-year resident, York Avenue. I've been a staunch supporter of the board, the police force, Chief Harmon, and I'm not going to step away from that at this point. What I will say is that the battle is on. You are really in hot seats. And what I have faith in is our process of battling out in your meetings with our input, with Chief's input, faith in our officers. And I want truth, honesty, openness, clarity, and you still got my heart. I'm with you, okay? I may not agree with everything, but I'll go with what you guys, I put you here, most of you. Sorry, I didn't vote for every one of you. But that's it. My comment, thank you. I appreciate the hard work that you are going to be doing.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Ellsbury, and I've lived here since 1998. And my question arises, or it's also a comment from the earlier discussion about the press release, which is all I'm holding here, not comments. I might need clarification of this, but I'm pretty sure I heard that we aren't even sure who wrote the press release. It might have been those lawyers, or it might have been some of these lawyers. But I know for sure that Director Sheriff Watt and perhaps another director learned of this press release from the press. And I just wanted to point that out. And that it doesn't seem right, and I'd like to know if the president issues press releases without consulting or even informing other directors. Are there other actions that he may take without the participation or knowledge of all of the directors? You mentioned the Brown Act, but so that's it.
If I may I respond to that, please? I know it's very frustrating to hear that we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't say this, we can't say that because of the law, but we are under the Brown Act. So generally speaking, when some sort of board action needs to be taken, it's not going to be done in an open session or at a closed session. Only 2 board members can work on it, or we violate the Brown Act. We could not have had all 5 board members contribute to that press release without violating the Brown Act, unless we drafted it in a closed session, which would have been too late.
And President Welsh, you do believe that the directors at least deserve the courtesy to know that you're releasing a press release, even if we don't review it. Because I should have been informed, Ms. Sheriff Watt should have been informed before a reporter was informed.
I apologize for that.
Thank you.
My name is Mabry Benson, and it doesn't matter how long I've lived here. It seems to be important to a lot of people. I wanted to make a comment to what Steve Bates said about contracting the police out. I believe in, was it 2011? We sent down to El Cerrito for a bid for services, and part of the bid says that the 10 officers, which I think we had at the time, will be stationed up here all the time, the same officers and services that we have always had. They would not be spending their time on San Pablo Avenue, but we would have the same services patrolling the whole district.
No.
Well,
I'll be very quick here. I don't want to get into the Brown-Taylor report. It was 2009, and he called for 6 officers, and they would be on patrol on the regular shift, but it would be a cut from 9 patrolmen and a chief to 6 officers.
And was that supposed to give us a savings?
That was the intent, but the savings weren't there. El Cerrito costs more per officer than we do. So the only way to make it cost-effective is to cut back on the number of officers you put on the street. So you don't have sergeants patrolling like we do now. You only have 6 patrolmen, period, no chief. And it's a cut in service from 10-person force to 6. That's how the numbers work out. Keep in mind, you can look at the Brown-Taylor
Police doesn't
report.
agree with that.
Well,
but-
no, you can look at the Brown-Taylor report. Their proposal's in there. I'm not trying to hide the
Okay.
ball from you, maybe. I'll never do that to you. But the bottom line is, the proposal covered only 6 officers.
Let me say this. I think this is a debate that is not going to finish tonight, so we'll have a chance to look at some of these reports and stats.
Steve made, and I still think, because I saw the number 10 in the cost figures, and I think Steve is not giving the right impression. So I'm going to disagree with you,
Well,
Mr. Tooms.
hopefully in the future
Another
we can
time.
get the data out and figure out what the answer is, okay?
I'm Brian Meckler. I live on Beloit. And I just wanted to echo Mark's comments and other comments that I heard, that this isn't going to end anytime soon. And I think you can feel the energy here tonight. I think you know we're not happy. And this is not going to be a quick deal. And so we're here for the duration. And we just ask the board and the police, the chief, to understand there's been an utter and complete loss of trust and confidence. I mean, it's just completely gone. And how it gets resolved, I don't know. I feel like it's a scene out of the Seven Samurais. Like, we just want our town back. I mean, I feel like it's like it's held hostage. Like, we can't work with them. We got to work through you, and you have all these laws, and it's complicated. You've created an obfuscated black box. And just all I would urge is that you do the right thing, because we're here for a long time, and you're going to be working through this for a long time. We're all going to be coming back. Do the right thing.
Welcome back.
Hi, I'm John Stein.
John, could you get closer, please?
My name is John Stein. I've lived in Kensington for over 32 years. My short comments have to do with this investigation of the incident everybody has referred to. I strongly encourage the board to get to the bottom of this breach of the officer's privacy rights. There has been a breach of this officer's privacy rights, and without delay. We should all support this investigation process. I'm sure you do. The investigation must be fair, objective, and thorough. I would like to remind everybody, including the press that is here tonight, that we live in the United States of America, where there is a rule of law. We should all support the investigation process, but we should all take a very deep breath and exercise some personal restraint before prematurely coming to any conclusions. In this country, which includes Kensington, California, we are all innocent until proven guilty. Unfortunately, a few residents have behaved like a lynch mob in this matter. I strongly encourage the board to pursue this matter with all due speed. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mickey Tull. I live on Kerr. I've lived here since 2008. I just want to say I am a former prosecutor, and I'm now a criminal defense attorney. And I'll tell you that if an officer came in front of me, first of all, I would be entitled to know that one of my clients that was a defendant was arrested or was investigated by an officer. And if they were involved in any sort of moral turpitude, that would be something that the defense would be entitled to, and it would basically almost guaranteed that that person would not get convicted of the crime. So for the protection of actually our community and to make sure that our officers are able to perform their jobs and protect us and be involved in investigations, we actually have to make sure that they are clean. We cannot have officers that we know are involved in moral turpitude be out there investigating on our behalf. It is not acceptable, and it's actually something that is going to go against us, because then again, if the defense finds out about it, that crime is not going to get prosecuted, and those people will not serve time or pay restitution or do anything. So even for just that pragmatic fact, along with everything else that's been said about the ethical and the moral things that have been broken here, this is an actual factor that should be considered. This Officer Barrow cannot stay, for sure. And the fact that this chief was supervising him and decided that he could stay and continue to investigate potential crimes that happen in our community is also outrageous, because during that entire time, our safety and these investigations have been compromised. So, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Hot dog. My name is Ciara Wood. Yeah, I grew up here, so I've lived here a long time, too. There's something that I have to say that I believe is very important, and that this is not a lynch mob. There may be a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, but this is not a lynch mob. This is... It's very important to say this. This is our community showing really an amazing amount of control, if you will, for really serious outrage. So please, do not confuse those expressions of outrage with being a mob at all, because that's not what I'm seeing here.
I'm going to try to do this without getting upset in front of everyone. My name is Sarah Schroeder. I live on Colgate Avenue. I am a mom to 3 young children, and I never want to see my police force involved in prostitution, in sex trafficking, or whatever has been reported in the news. I have lost complete trust in my officers. You have come to my house. You have helped my children. Please, board, do whatever you can, whatever is in your power to fix this situation, to better our community. That is why we are here. I am shaking, I am upset, and I want you to fix this.
I'm Peter Conrad. One of the things about this is that, and the lynch mob deal, is that we're not operating on allegations here exactly. It's not like somebody said that something happened and we don't know what happened. There's a police report about this in Reno, which we could probably get. In spite of, I don't know whether our policeman's Bill of Rights stretches out there so that we would be prevented from getting it, but something actually did happen. This cop went with fellow officers to the police station to report what had happened so that he could recover his gun. So he's not exactly denying that something happened. And to say that we are just putting this up like we're kind of lynching somebody with no knowledge about anything, I think is not true.
Good evening. My name's Chris Hall, and I'm a resident of Kensington of 27 years, live on Coventry Road. I think that part of the problem we're facing here is information. We're not getting full disclosure. And I understand that there are legal issues there that have to do with that. There's questions we all have about why was there a group of Kensington police officers in Reno at the time? Did they go up there to aid this particular officer? Or did they all go together? What happened? How, yeah. There's a lot of questions, and it creates...
Can we answer that question?
Yes, please.
Chief, would you please enlighten us about the group, what they were doing there, whether they were using any Kensington resources or any of that kind of thing?
Just so everyone knows, we have 2 patrol teams during the week. One team is working, the other team is off. The team that went up to Reno, they were not on district business. They did not use district vehicles. They did not use district gasoline. They were up there as a team socially.
What do you mean by that, Chief?
They were on their days off. 2 of the officers were with their wives. They went up to Reno because it's a destination.
Why were they up in Reno? Was that the question?
Officers are allowed to carry their weapons when they're off duty because we're police officers all the time. So they're allowed to carry their weapons off duty. They're allowed to carry their weapons in Nevada.
Who were they? Were the officers identified?
Yes, they were. They were interviewed during the investigation.
And can we know who they were?
Why? There's no charges against them, no action against them, right?
The witness officers were Eric Stegman, Juan Ramos, Chris Turner, and Doug Wilson.
Great. Okay. I just think that the more information we have, the better we can feel about knowing something as to the facts of what went on.
And I just want to be clear, they had nothing to do with this incident. Am I correct about that, Chief?
That's
that was
absolutely
your finding?
correct, yes.
Okay.
Just so we can get that much clear.
Great. Okay. That helps a lot. We get a little more transparency with every person that steps up here, I hope. What I did want to make, I do have a question for the board. You learned about this incident back in May. We elected 2 new representatives to the board in November. 3, excuse me.
No, 2 new ones. I was reelected.
You were reelected. But Vanessa and Rochelle were new to the board. Were they informed at that time in November of this incident and the investigation that was ongoing with Chief Harmon?
We certainly didn't notify them before the election. We probably should have notified them as soon as possible after the election. We didn't. We should have done that.
When were they notified? When did they know about this?
We gave them a full report today in the closed session.
That's the first time.
My name's still Simon Brofman. I just want to clarify a comment, a response that the chief just made. I'm sorry. I just want to clarify the comment that the police chief just made. You said they are policemen all the time. So they're even policemen when they break the law? Because prostitution is legal in Reno, but only in specific places. If the police report is correct, this took place in a motel, which makes it illegal. Isn't that a dereliction of duty? I don't know. There must be some phrase for what took place other than sex.
That's, if I'm not incorrect, that's not something we can comment on. Is that correct?
I'm
Sorry.
Why is that?
Can you explain why the law doesn't allow us to comment on that?
The disciplinary nature of it makes it off limits.
Louder.
Because it involves the investigation of police officer discipline, it's not disclosed.
Okay, let's make it a general question. If a policeman or policewoman is on duty and they do an illegal act, what does that mean legally?
It means they've done an illegal act.
Yes. Well, what is it? Have they broken the law?
That's an awfully vague hypothetical.
Well, you get paid well, I'm sure. I'm sure you can answer it.
Oh, I can answer that.
Okay.
Can I?
Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah.
The officer was never convicted of a crime, was never charged with a crime.
Hi, two follow-up questions from what was just said. Chief, you said that you have half the staff on patrol and half off. So you listed 4 additional officers that were present in Reno, so that makes 5 with Barrow. So is this something that happens like half on, half off every week? How does that work? Are they paid full-time, but then they get, is this like a half on, half off every week thing? So they're on every other week, 5 people? Do you understand my question?
Not really. We have 2 patrol teams. Each patrol team is made up of 2 officers and a sergeant. The patrol teams work, one team works Sunday through Tuesday, the other team works Thursday through Saturday, and each team works every other Wednesday. Officer Ramos was the traffic officer at the time. He was on vacation. Detective Sergeant Barrow was also on vacation. So patrol team that remained in the district was still on duty. So at no time was there any
I understand. Okay, that makes sense.
Coverage.
And just a sort of question that came up in the course of this, how many lawyers do we have here assisting us right now, and what are you paid per hour?
At this table here, we have our lawyer from Hanson Bridget, to my left. We have Lynn Walter, who's our district administrator, and we have Deborah Russell, who's our CPA accountant.
I see. And so this is a contract lawyer, contractor.
Yes.
And what are we paying for you? What are we paying you tonight?
I believe our firm. I think it's. I'm not don't serve this client all the time, but I believe that our blended rate is $305 an hour.
He believes it's $305 an hour. Thank you.
Hi, I'm still Gerren Corbett. I actually work for the University of California. We wish we had such a good contracted rate, actually. But my concern is just to follow up. I think, regardless, there's a lot of looking back, and I think still a lot more disclosure to come. But I think one thing is clear, that we cannot have a situation where we have some of our newly elected directors not informed in the same information as the incumbent. We're just not going to be able to repair the damage. You're not going to be able to regain the trust of the community, and we're certainly not going to get consensus if we don't change those practices. Thank you.
We needed somebody with some engineering skills to get us some good microphone. I've never seen this happen before. And, fits into a cover-up, doesn't it? The microphones don't work well. You gotta suck on them. Oops. You guys, you're a good crowd. I'll be back here next month. Bada boom. I do have to say that it was mentioned how the police and the fire, their relative efficiencies. I've had to use both agencies quite a bit. The police take very little time to get to my place. They're there on time, within minutes. They've always been supportive. The young lady who is now the main female voice on the force has been great herself. She comes over. The fire department, I've had a couple dozen 911 calls, yeah? The fire department is there within 2 minutes, but sometimes before. I have never had them arrive late. They're there before the police are there. They're merged with El Cerrito. Just to give you that perspective, that we may not have such a bad situation if we merge with El Cerrito. I mean, I don't know really anything about that. I can't say, but I sort of tend to look at that and say, it's an avenue that we should look at. The fact that there appears to be a cabal on the board, that we have some members basically giving the shaft to other members, and I didn't mention any names. No names. So anyway, it's I don't think there's probably a handful of people here who feel that you guys are doing anything but offering up a lot of lame excuses, and the police chief included, and the general manager included. And it's not satisfactory just to say, we are doing our best to you. It's obvious that you're not doing your best. There's a lot of politicking. None of you would have been elected had you had the results of that incident in Reno before the election. Not one of you would have been elected or re-elected. Sorry, 2 of you would have been elected probably. So you know, there's another flag that goes up. I could go on, I'm sorry, but I think the turnout here should be sufficient to send you guys packing to your think tanks.
Mr. Stanton, good people and even good policymakers make mistakes. Len and I have discussed this, Rochelle and I have discussed this with Len, and Pat, and I'm confident that we will be in the loop, and I think that's an issue that we can move on from tonight, but I appreciate the support from the electorate here.
Well, this is my first open mic night, my first open mic evening. My name is Don Morris, and I've lived here in Kensington for 31 years. And I've seen a substantial change in the atmosphere in the last few years. I suppose I'm not the only one to notice it. I don't think the service has changed. I don't think the confidence has changed. But what I see is a bad feeling coming in, and conflict and mistrust and assumption of bad faith among people, which is really a different type of atmosphere than we used to have in the previous decades. And I'm trying to be a logical person, and when I look at the infinite information that's in the paper, I haven't been at the meetings, I see things which are contradictory. And I have a feeling personally that whenever anyone comes out with information which is found to be not correct, then my confidence in that person's opinion is reduced drastically. So I'd like a clarification on something that I've read recently. There was a claim by the Property Owners Association that the budget has increased X amount per year. A clarification was given that that's actually the amount for 3 years. And if it's true that it was the increase for 3 years, then I would say that the Property Owners Association, before coming out with the publicity and circulating it among the population, should have been a little careful to be sure that what they say was accurate. I don't know if that's exactly on the point here of what we're supposed to be what's the subject of discussion. As far as the board is concerned, I'd like to go back to something which I have not heard about today, but it seems to me important. And that is, if I'm not mistaken, certain people in this community, and I think board members at one point, made allegations of criminal conduct or misconduct to the county, which led to a county investigation, which found that there was no merit in those allegations. So if that's correct, as I understand that's the situation, then those people who made those allegations were totally irresponsible because they didn't bother to find out the accuracy before they ran up a lot of government expenditure and public expenditure in this grand jury. And after that, then they went in court cases or instigated legal proceedings, which ended up being thrown out. Now, I think all of us here know that going to court is a last resort, and you find out, first of all, whether you have a case before you go to court. You don't run it into the court and see what happens, sort of throw the dice. That's sort of irresponsible. So for me, those people who took those actions have lost the credibility, because if they were responsible people, these events wouldn't have occurred this way. So I only would suggest that when we're evaluating the different viewpoints here, we should ask who among the people who have been involved here in the public discourse have shown by their actions that they're consistent, and who have shown inconsistency or irresponsibility and had to later on change their position. For example, the ones who made the allegations and then later on made legal cases, then they flipped it around and said, oh, the board is wasting money with legal expenses. Well, because the board filed a case. Well, actually, of course, they were the ones themselves who did it and forced that to take place. And then they tried to throw it on the board, as though the board was instigating cases for no reason at all. I don't think elected members of boards usually make a practice, or elected boards usually make a practice of starting lawsuits for nothing. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you. I'd appreciate any corrections to any of my information or that I mentioned.
It's been 4 minutes, you have 1 minute left.
I'd just like to know if there's anything I said that's not correct.
We were sued twice. There was a demand for arbitration from the garbage company, and then we were also sued by citizens who claimed we went through a wrong process in approving the last contract of the chief. So there were 2 lawsuits that we did not instigate.
Yes, but both of them, a lot of us think could have been avoided very simply.
How could it be avoided? How could the lawsuit by the people who sued the board, how could that be avoided?
All right, that's enough.
Thank you.
Do you have anything more you want to say?
No, I wanted to verify, is it correct what I said about the criminal claims and the grand
Yeah, there were
jury?
allegations that were made against the chief that were not borne out.
So that means they made allegations without verifying the facts first?
Well, I was not part of that. That was before my time, but I understand that process occurred, and essentially the chief was exonerated.
I had one other comment. Now that we've learned that the minority directors will have equal access to information, as of tonight, I guess. Now that we've learned that the minority directors, as of tonight, will have equal access to information that all the other board members have, that's a great step forward. I just want to bring one other point of information to all of you who are interested in these equal access issues. In 2012, I had correspondence with Mr. Franklin, and I asked why it was that the directors on the board didn't each have equal access to the board's attorney. And he wrote to me and said that it was practice over a period of years that only the president of the board and the chief of police / general manager would have access to the attorney. And I think that it would be a good idea for the board to reconsider that, because I think that we have elected all of you, not just 3 of you, and to the extent that people on the board feel that they need legal advice, they shouldn't have to hire their own attorneys. They are board members for the community, and the community pays for the attorney. And the last thing I want to say is we're all vigilant, we're all energized, but we know from experience that if we don't keep our eye on the ball, we're going to strike out again. So keep your eye on the ball.
Please excuse me if this point has been made. I'm seeking a clarification. Has the board decided whether it's going to act on the MOU in this meeting, or has it decided to table it and revisit the issue?
That's the next item up on the agenda.
All right, thank you.
Well, almost the next item. We have to approve the consent calendar.
Just a point of clarification. The DA's letter with regard to the charges that were brought were claimed to have stated that there was no evidence of wrongdoing. That's not what it said. It said there was no evidence of criminal wrongdoing, though it was represented the other way. And one of the reasons that there was no evidence of criminal wrongdoing is that there was no per diem established by this board. There were no regulations to have been broken.
Okay, it looks like we're finished with opening public comments. We've heard an awful lot of powerful comments this morning, let me say that, or this afternoon, this evening. It's been a long day. So we're going to move on now. The next item is approval of the consent calendar. Does anybody want to remove an item from the consent calendar or discuss an item of the consent calendar before we take a motion on whether to adopt? I don't see Carl here.
Carl, you're not going to say anything? Come on.
All right. Hey, do I have a motion on approval of the consent calendar? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Lynn, please.
I do have a comment. And Carl, you reminded me. I am so sorry. Okay, at the Finance Committee meeting, Carl, you raised a concern about the compensated absences that appeared on the balance sheet of the draft audit that we reviewed at that meeting. And you indicated that you had looked back at the audit from 2012 and had compared compensated absences from that audit to compensated absences of the 2013, and you said there had been a 20% increase and you were concerned. So based on your concern, I went back and looked at the balance sheets from the audited financials going back to 2007. And what I discovered was that the compensated absences amount shown on the balance sheet fluctuated throughout that period of time. And first of all, I ascertained that there was actually a 17% increase between fiscal year 2012 and fiscal year 2013. And I found that the total amounts in absolute dollars fluctuated from a high of $93,000 in 2007 to $58,000 in 2009. And when adjusted for inflation, the amount reported in 2007, which would have been June 30th, 2007, so a couple of months before the general manager, chief of police, was hired. When adjusted for inflation, that 2000 amount would have been $108,000 in 2013, which would have represented a 16% decline between 2007 and 2013. So thank you, Carl, for bringing that to our attention. I don't think we have a rising slope here. Rather, we have a zigzag line. This amount changes from year to year depending on circumstances. So thank you. I'm glad I made your evening.
I move we adopt the consent calendar.
I'll second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, well, our next item is the MOU.
Getting to 9:45.
Yes, that is a good point. Chuck is reminding me it's 9:43. We're close to 9:45. And according to board policy, board meetings do not go beyond 10 o'clock unless there is at least a 4 to 5 vote for us to go beyond 10 o'clock. So the question now is, do we have a motion to go beyond 10 o'clock?
I move we go beyond 10 o'clock until we're done with business.
I second it.
Any opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oops.
All righty.
I know it's been the tendency lately to just say until the close of business, but, you know, if you guys are going to go till midnight or 1, I think you should put a time limit on it. You know, I agree 15 minutes is rather short, but how about like 11, and then see how we all feel?
Well, maybe this is so important tonight, I'd hate to put any time limit on any of this. It's just too important to walk away because we're tired. I'm not. Send out for
You can have
Starbucks.
another vote at 10:45.
No, that's
I
just
think
gonna-
I think it counteracts the whole spirit of having a 10 o'clock closure by just saying we're going to vote to have the meeting until we're done.
I do believe that we can probably finish without going too late tonight. I think we've gotten over the bulk of
President
the...
Walsh, why can't we just offer a friendly amendment to the motion?
Sure.
Check in again at 10:30 and see how we're all feeling.
Sure.
I second.
Okay. Let's do it.
Do you want to take a vote so we have a...
Yeah.
Okay, well, any all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. We're...
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm opposed to it. I'm in favor of going until we're done, but it's 4-1, so that's democracy.
Well, we'll check in at 10:30. Now, one thing I do want to be clear on is, you know, it's a majority vote at 10:30. It's not 4/5.
It's 4/5. Why is it not 4/5?
Because there's only one provision in the P&P for a 4/5 vote, and that's for if we go beyond 10 o'clock.
Let's cross that bridge when we come to it, and let's move on. We're wasting time as we're talking, okay?
Sure. Okay, Mr. Toombs or Ms. Gillette, would you like to brief the board on... Mr. Toombs or Ms. Gillette, would you like to brief the board on item 1?
I'd like to make a suggestion in light of the comments that have been made tonight and the interest of the community. I believe that we should delay consideration of the MOU until the next meeting.
Is that a motion?
Well, I'll make it a motion so we can discuss it. I move that we
Yeah.
delay the consideration of the MOU
All right.
until the next meeting.
Any discussion on the part of the board first?
Yes. I'm
There's a motion before, do you have a second?
Oh, do we have a second? Chuck is seconding it, okay. Discussion?
I'm concerned that based on the considerations we've discussed tonight, that our negotiation process is undeniably, irrevocably tainted. And so I'm concerned that tabling this MOU draws out a procedure that may require us to begin again. So I would like the board to take that under consideration.
Well, can I just get clarification on that? What do you feel we should do?
Well, I'm wondering if we can table the agreement, but then I guess I want to seek further information, perhaps legally, whether this process, we feel that it opens Kensington to liabilities of conflict of interest in the negotiation process, and that we have a duty to protect all our sworn personnel and all those that are affected. And so I am concerned that those affected by the contract have not been able to comment on its effect.
Are you talking about the police officers? I'm just
Yes.
not clear. So just one thing to make clear, the police officers elect who will negotiate on their behalf. So they elected, as I understand it, they chose Keith Barrow and Eric Stegman to negotiate on their behalf. Am I incorrect in that, Chief?
That's correct.
So we didn't choose them. They were chosen by the police officers. The police officers are responsible for choosing their own negotiators. They chose the people who negotiated the contract. So I'm not sure. I'm happy to look into it, but I'm not sure what the conflict would be.
Do they retain the right to revoke that approval at any point in the process?
Chief, I don't know the ins and outs of the police union.
The contract that's before you tonight has actually been approved by the Police Officers Association. They gave their negotiators the power to approve the contract that's before you tonight. Now, so they've approved the contract. It's up to the board to decide whether or not they're going to move forward with it.
Was that a unanimous approval?
I don't know what their vote was.
Okay.
So there's a motion about...
There's a motion about tabling it at least until the next meeting. We could re-agendize it for the next meeting and take it up then. By that time, we will have had our closed meeting on the chief, so we'll know a little bit more. So why don't we just take it meeting by meeting? Does that make sense?
Maybe I'm unclear. Can I... Is the concern that an officer under investigation was actively negotiating a contract in which, directly or indirectly, the chief of police would be impacted, the chief of police being the supervisor, that there would be some undue pressure to negotiate terms that maybe the bargaining unit would not have confidence in?
Yes, that's absolutely right. That is my concern.
Run that by me again.
Yeah, I mean, just bear in mind, this is a process we've always followed, okay?
Right,
But
right.
okay.
And maybe Len, you can help me, or maybe you could help me, or Mr. Manolius. It's a little unusual within a bargaining unit to have management sit within that unit, even though management doesn't have a vote.
He's not in the unit.
He's in the union.
No, there's been a misconception, and there's been a lot on next door about this, that the police chief is in the union. He's not in the union. He can't be in the union.
Well, okay, let me correct that. I am a dues-paying member in the union for one reason, and that is for legal representation. I do not vote on their matters that they take into consideration. I don't go to their meetings. I'm not a voting member. But to get legal representation that I'm not provided, I have to be a member of the association.
I stand correct.
So you're not a bargaining member of the association, essentially?
No. And just to kind of clarify one other point, I think the point was, or somebody made a comment tonight that I negotiated this contract. I did not negotiate this contract. The board had their two representatives, and the Police Officers Association had their two representatives. The only thing, my only input in this was to the board as a staff person, providing them answers to financial questions they had as negotiations were continued.
If I can add one thing to that, 5 members of the board negotiated this contract. The whole board went through everything that Pat and I ever took out or brought back. We never decided anything without all 5 members having a full discussion on it in closed session. You guys can go back to the last 2 years' worth of agendas when we were working on the last contract. Everyone is an agendized discussion of a bargaining agreement with the police officers. So not Pat, not I, not the chief, but all 5 board members worked on this contract together. Just to be clear, the past board, it was presented in November, and it was tabled until December, and tabled until January, and tabled until now.
Could I make one more clarification? The fact that the Police Officers Association does not represent me, This contract has nothing to do with me, okay? So they don't represent me. I'm not included in this contract whatsoever. I have my own separate contract that I negotiate on my own.
All right, so we still have a motion to table this item until next meeting. Is that still live?
Yes.
You have a second? Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. It's tabled till next meeting. All right, item 2, Chief, will you please brief?
Actually,
What?
if we're tabling item 1, items 2 and 3 fall away because they're backup
right, that's
resolutions to item 1. So the next item will be item 4. Folks, this is really still important stuff to listen to because we're going to be talking about a structural contract for this building. For those of you who are interested in the safety of this building, you may want to stick around and listen up about what we plan to do, okay? Thank you.
And Lynn, may I say one thing before people actually leave?
Go ahead.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Obviously, it's hard to sit up here and listen and take our medicine as I think we were required to do and should do. And so I just want to express appreciation on behalf of myself, and I think I speak for all the board members, that people were willing to get up and talk. I know it's hard to speak in public for a lot of people. I appreciate the heartfelt messages. I appreciate the humor. I even appreciate some of the very pointed and disapproving comments. But thank you for coming out. It's sort of like a minister on Easter Sunday. It's nice to see everybody here. It'd be great to see you all here at every meeting.
Len, may I?
Go ahead.
Oh, just before folks leave, I want to make sure that I mention that I'm adding these.
Speak
Lynn,
louder, they're not
okay.
hearing you.
These are emails I received in the last few days, and I want to submit them for the public record. So if you sent an email to me, considering I have entered it in the public record.
Your email working now?
Fingers crossed.
All right,
that
so
my email is working.
So we move to item 4, which indeed is very important. It involves the structural integrity of this building. Chief, will you brief the board?
Sure. Following Measure L not passing by the required 2/3 vote needed to fund the community center remodeling project, there have been several discussions in the community on why a seismic analysis of the community center is never completed. Lisa Corona, a member of the Park Buildings Committee, provided a brief explanation as to why that occurred. I'm just going to state what she sent to me in an email. When the concept of the Park Buildings Master Plan was developed for all park buildings, it was premature at that time to get a complete structural and seismic evaluations, because at that time we had no idea what was planned for the buildings, and it would have been a waste of money if the plans for the buildings changed dramatically. Case in point, if the district spent $10,000 to evaluate the annex and then proposed demolition, there would have been an outcry of wasted funds. And actually, for those of you that don't know, that was one of the recommendations that were made, that the annex was too expensive to fix, and therefore it should be demolished. When the district decided to go for the bond measure, we knew there was much work still to be done, including final design, structural evaluations, and construction documents suitable for bidding. The district did not want to spend this money in advance of the approval of the bond measure, since the bond measure might not pass and the money would be wasted. If the measure did pass, the bond measure would have paid for the design and construction work to be completed. And as we all know, the bond measure did not pass. Muller and Caulfield did perform an in-depth structural analysis. Did not perform an in-depth structural analysis, since it was not in their contract for the reasons mentioned above. Rosemary Muller did use her best expertise, and she also spoke with Stan Wu, the structural engineer on the earlier KCC Deborah Lane remodeling plan. Wu did not do a thorough structural analysis, but he did focus on the west wall design. For those of you that don't know, part of the KCC remodeling project had that west wall there being considered to have the French doors placed in it and additional windows. So the only real structural analysis that was done on the building was on the concept of having French doors on that wall. I had a conversation, let me take this back. Lisa Corona had wrote me, and she said that she had a conversation with Rosemary immediately following the election results, and she indicated to me that she wanted to convey that the next step for the district might be to have a structural engineer do analysis on the structure and make recommendations for basic safety, as well as the building being brought up to a level of essential facility. Rosemary had told Lisa at the time that she does worry about the safety and thinks that the district should complete a more in-depth analysis. I, too, spoke with Rosemary following the election and did ask her for a recommendation as to a firm that could provide the needed structural analysis on the building. Rosemary informed me at that time she has worked with Stephen DeJesse of IDA Associates in the past, and she's been very satisfied with his work. Following the November election and the December holidays, I contacted Stephen DeJesse and informed him of the history of our project and requested he provide a scope of services proposal for a structural analysis of the community center. That proposal was attached to this memo. I also contacted Stan Wu, the structural engineer that provided an analysis of the west wall plan of the KCC remodeling plan, and who the district used for structural engineering work on our park restroom project. Stan Wu indicated that he would also submit a proposal to provide an analysis of the building, and he informed me that he would have that proposal for me before this February board meeting. On February 2nd, after not hearing from Mr. Wu, I contacted him, and he informed me that his firm was currently booked with projects and that he would not be submitting a proposal to us. The IDA proposal is attached to the memo. The fee for the analysis of the community center is $7,100. Our architect for the park buildings master plan, Rosemary Muller, has worked with IDA in the past, and it recommends their work. I am recommending that the board accept the proposal from IDA, and I also have some additional information. Earlier today, I was contacted by Lisa Corona, and she brought to my attention, after her review of the contract and scope of work, that there were additional items that weren't included in that scope of work that she felt that we should ask for. So I was able to get a hold of Stephen DeJesse today, and I told him that some of our concerns were that his scope of work that he was proposing did not identify, it did not provide an analysis for an essential facility. It was only to analyze the building for basic safety. The proposal also excluded destructive exploration, and what that is they need to bore into the cinder blocks to see what is inside them, and that will provide a better idea of how well the building will stand a seismic event. So I asked him for an estimate of those prices to be included in his proposal, and his estimate to me was he felt that we should budget $4,000 to increase the scope of work to include bringing this building not only just for a basic safety plan, but to bring it up to an acceptable level for a essential building facility. And he also suggested that we budget $480 to, I'm sorry. I'm bad. The $4,000 was actually to do the boring, the destructive basic analysis of the cinder block, and then the $480 was to also do an analysis to bring this up to structural facility capabilities. So what was in the packet was a proposal for $7,100, and we should budget an additional $4,480 to actually get a complete engineering report.
I'm sorry. Can I comment? I know a lot about this. An essential facility is a facility where a doctor can continue to operate in an emergency situation. This should not be viewed. I don't understand why we're looking at this as an essential facility. That's number one. Rosemary talked about the structural lack of integrity of this building, but she had very little budgeted in her project to improve the structural integrity of this building. Why we are looking at the structural integrity of these buildings without a set of plans that we're thinking of doing makes no sense. Now, I know, Mr. Watt, that your son had his house, had to do a structural analysis of his house, but that's because he's in the earthquake district, in a labeled area, and it is overkill. Everything, the whole approach to this building is overkill. It's a 4,000 square foot small project. We don't need an architect who does big projects. We don't need to do, to do it as if you want this building to be an essential facility, right now you just should tear the building down, because your footing is not 1.5 times the size it needs to be. It's a small footing. It needs to be 1.5 times what would regularly be required for a footing if it is to be an essential facility. Not to mention all the other, think of an emergency room in a hospital. Those are the standards that you are asking a structural engineer to even consider engineer this building to. I think that this thing is run amok. And the people, the building committee proposing a $2.1 million renovation of a 4,000 square foot building is amok. Trying to even discuss seriously making it an essential facility is running amok. I don't know what more I can do. I have come to these meetings. I told Rosemary 3 or 4 years ago that this was too much. The community would not go for it. And it was like, we'll see what we can do. So I would be happy to sit down with any group of people, with the board. It seems like we're on a train. I was told by one member of the board that the train has already left the station. And look where it took us. It took us to Measure L, and it took us to even discussing having the building engineered as an essential facility. It's insane, and the community should put a stop to it.
Please do.
I have, you're being penny wise and pound foolish here, Deborah, no offense to you, but please, I have the floor. If you don't mind, I would really like to speak without you interrupting me tonight, okay? We're talking about a $480 increase in cost to do an ESL, and you object to that? That's $480. Whether we do it down the road is entirely different than whether we're having it inspected now. I cannot see the difference. And $4,000 for destructive testing to look to see what's inside these walls? We don't know what's in there. We have no idea if there's rebar in there, what the level of concrete is, or anything about it. To not do those two things seems to me really kind of doing a halfway job that was not designed. It's not what we want to do. Mr. Watt's been pushing us for months about getting a serious structural analysis to this building. I'm just telling you, regardless, this is a public space. I think we owe it to the community to have some level of safety analysis done. And if it means spending $480 more, please. $480 more for an ESL, and you object to that?
Well, I object to it.
I don't.
Well, I object to it. I'm not entirely sure what the scope of the project. This is sort of an uninformed item. Have you convened the new park committee that was appointed by President Welsh yet? Has that meeting
that
happened?
has not been
Well, let's do that. Let's table this item.
No, there's really a sense of getting this building discussed right now for its structural integrity before we do anything else.
I am having a little, maybe I don't get something, but, you know, I have heard a lot of concern about the safety of the building and speculation that it's not safe because of various theories. And so it seems to me it makes sense that the first step is to do whatever destructive testing is necessary, whatever analysis necessary to know exactly what kind of a hazard we're dealing with. Once we know that, we can decide what we want to do about it.
My concern is a little bit different. I'm concerned that we only have one bid.
Yeah.
And I actually think that before we make any decisions, we should have more than one bid. I just think it's a good practice. I thought that in the garbage contract for a while. I think, again, I just don't think, if I were looking at this for my own house, I would want to get several bids, take the best bid I thought was reasonable as well as competent. So I think we're not ready, I'm not ready to vote that we should spend $10,000 plus based on one bid.
I agree.
Mr. Watt.
Maybe I can help to solve your problem here. By the way, I'm Jim Watt. I'm a 46-year resident of this community. Yes, I have been pushing for some time to see that this facility is made safe for the children that occupy it. And out of concern for that, in fact, I did, at my expense, ask the structural engineer who is working on a project that is near and dear to me here in Kensington to come over, and I have a full set of plans for this building. Mr. Tooms, I actually have the drawings that show exactly how this building was put together, and I'm more than happy to share that with you people and the individuals who will be working here. The point I want to make, however, is that I asked Mr. Wallace, is his name, if he would be willing to also put in a bid. Now, unfortunately, I made a mistake because I had this in hand when he came over here with me. He looked at it. By the way, he thinks the building actually looks better than I thought it did, so that's an encouraging sign. I have a full set of drawings, so he looked through all the drawings. He looked at how the building was put together. He said that he would try to get me a proposal before this meeting, but he called me late this afternoon to say that he was unable to get to it, but he would probably get it out first thing tomorrow, and that if I wanted, I could come before you tonight and mention that. I asked him what the price would be. He said $5,000. That's for the same work, this scope of work that's being done here. Now, I understand that it wasn't fair for the people here to have their bid shopped to this other individual. However, given the fact that we are opening up the process here, I think it would be appropriate to possibly include Mr. Wallace as part of this bid process so we get two competitive bids with a scope of work that appears to be in keeping with what this facility needs. And I'd be happy to talk to Mr. Wallace, and I can get back to you certainly by Monday, or to the chief here, with Mr. Wallace's views as to what he thinks should be included in this, if that would help you in making this decision. And then maybe we can get together and put together a scope of work that the two individuals can bid on. And unfortunately, I guess delay bringing that back to the board until next meeting. But I just want to let you know that I'd be happy to help you work on that.
Thank you. Yeah, so do we want to give some encouragement to this?
I think we need some more bids. I don't know who Mr. Wallace is from Mr. Jones. Can you just wait and let me finish? I mean, I really do think it's important for everyone to respect each other's time and space. Okay, so I respected you when you were talking. I'd appreciate if you respect mine. And I realize you're an expert, and so you feel compelled. I feel that same way sometimes. Anyway, I don't know who Mr. Wallace is. I do feel like we need to get some additional bids. And what I would like to do is see us make a concerted effort. I guess this is you, Chief, to find out who the best people in the business are that do this and get bids from them, and then figure out which the most competitive one is in terms of cost as well as competency, and then make a decision. To me, that just seems like a reasoned way to do this.
Well, I do agree, and all I wanted to say is this is a small firm. It's not a big firm. We need small firms to be dealing with a small building. $5,000 is a reasonable amount. Twice that much, I mean, come on.
You gotta let her finish.
I'm an expert too. For one thing, if the plans exist, and they didn't know the plans existed, then they would need to spend $4,000 on constructive testing, right? But if we have plans that show that how the building was constructed, that $4,000 disappears. And I think that it would be useful to have an engineer come in here and say, you know, oh my God, the least that you have to do is such and such. Then you know what you're dealing with when you want to make some plans. I disagree with your memo that you don't want to do anything until you have some plans. I think you need information about the building and the minimum that might have to be done to it before you make a plan.
All right, so we'll try to get some more bids.
Well, you know, one of the key points that was just brought up here is the fact that we do not have the complete plans for this building. And that was the first thing that Mr. De Jesus asked for was, do you have the plans? And I said, no, we do not. In fact, Rosemary Muller didn't have the plans. So yes, his bid is high because of the fact that we didn't have the plans. Now that I know their plans are available, I think that changes the playing field for everyone. And like I said, unfortunately, I had thought I would have a second bid for you tonight, but that individual who has worked for us in the past was unable to do so. I'm sorry.
Okay, in 2010, anybody wants to know about these plans and why there's confusion, it's not because he didn't try. 2010, the police looked through the building. The police looked, I kept pushing and pushing. Look, you gotta find those plans. There is a member of our community that I also asked, and I guess recently somebody asked that person too, and what they were finally willing to do is to dig through bags and bags of their drawings to find them, which they hadn't been able to summon this energy to do before. But it's exactly
This is for Peter. Oh my God, this is what you should do. Structural engineer, but not me. I'm also I'm also an expert in construction defect consulting. Been through lots of destructive testing. First off, when we come out to look and try to figure out what to do, we try to look for damage. I don't see any. Okay, this thing went through the Loma Prieta earthquake where we shook pretty good, and we don't got cracks, we don't got nothing. So I don't mind spending money to find things out, but I don't like chasing our tails either. So I would be cautious about grabbing a bunch of experts and coming out. The biggest thing probably is the roof, how it's attached to the walls up there. That's a lightweight steel joist, and the roof is, it looks like tongue and groove sheeting, blah, blah, blah. It's a fairly lightweight roof. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't, other than being kind of utilitarian, I mean, the building looks fine. So I don't mind spending money as a homeowner, but, be cautious with this that's my recommendation as an expert.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sherry Morris, and I'm probably going to win tonight because I only moved here 14 months ago. So I've liked it here very well. I'm not sure after tonight, but I've actually been a designer for 30 years, and usually when I start a project, I try and get a scope of work going and understand what the community needs are, what the community desires are, and what the community wish list is, and try and sit down and hash out what the goals for the project are really going to be. Since I'm new in town, I'm wondering, is there a scope of work project that has identified all of this and defined what the function of this building actually is and needs to be for the next 20 years,
Yes.
10 years? And how can I get that?
We did a very thorough series of town hall meetings. We hired a professional consultant to come in. We asked the community to come in on 3 or 4 different occasions over a 2-year period. We scoped out as much as we could of uses and what the future uses would look like. We have a report prepared by Muller and Caulfield. It's an Oakland architectural firm. We're happy to give it to you if it's not already online. It's online, so you can get it online. We spent a lot of time over 3 years developing just that kind of look and feel for what the building would be, what community uses would be for it, and projected costs on top of everything else. So we have that legwork all done.
We just don't have the structural analysis. So.
Or the money.
Well, there's that too.
So
All
I
right,
move
so-
that we table this item till next month, and that we ask the chief general manager to get additional bids from reliable sources.
Can I ask a quick question? When you say bid, normally you go out for bid, you publish the proposal and you seek the bid. It seems to me that we're somewhat cherry picking how we find the right contractors to go. Wouldn't it make more sense to have a 30-day process of opening up the bids, putting it out to whoever wanted to bid for it, and then assess those bids that come in? Because right now we talked about 2 bids, Wallace and whoever the other one. Actually, we've already made some selections, which I don't think is appropriate.
We could, instead of a call out for an RFP, we can do an RFQ, which would be, qualified firms that, and so what you do is you put a scope of work or, give the size of the building, and then firms identify their, whether or not they're interested, they go on a list, and then, the general manager can assess them. It's a modified.
Well, it takes a little more time that way.
I mean, we've been tabling this, and we've been talking about it, and we just tabled the MOU, and so, what's another 30 days?
Well, I know if we can get it done reasonably soon, I think it's a great idea, and I like the RFQ idea.
There's 2 things going on here. Because this is an expert, you don't need to do either an RFQ or an RFP. The board has a discretion, if the contract's less than $25,000, to hire the person without all this. The other thing is, if you do an RFP or an RFQ, you've just added probably $5,000 to $10,000 to the cost. It's not an easy thing you just dash off. It does take some time and some consideration, and it's not a 30-day process. It is really a lengthy process. We did an RFP when we wanted to hire Muller Caulfield to do the conceptual model for this building, and that took us close to 6 months. So it's not a one-off thing you can slap out real quick and get done. If there's a sense of urgency, which I detected at the last meeting from those in attendance, I don't think you want to wait 6 months to get an RFP or an RFQ.
Doesn't an RFQ take a little less time?
In my experience, I work in Parks and Open Space, Special District, piece of cake. Took me 2 weeks.
And I think that we have kind of a structural problem, no pun intended, in that the Policy and Procedures Manual doesn't outline a procedure for obtaining bids. And I think that we could be very transparent and very clear by setting up parameters that are listed, that we will try and obtain X number of bids in a certain time period so that we maintain partiality and move along.
Actually, the Public Contracts Code is filled with requirements on public bid requirements. You don't need it in your own policy manual because you're just going to add to the complexity. State law already covers the notion of how you make public bids available. It's really very detailed and very exhaustive.
Well, maybe then we can add it to the manual so that it's available, or on the website so that it's available for all community members to see.
It's a little harder than just that. I mean, the Public Contracts Code is a multi-volume set, and it does take a lot of time to wade through it. You can do whatever you want. I'm just telling you as a practical matter, it is going to be spending a lot of time developing something that you may use once or twice. and you're better off relying on the Public Contracts Code, doing the bid documents if you want to, when you need them. But spending the time to develop that expertise and to put it into this, it may not be absolutely necessary, and it doesn't add to the transparency. The public bid requirements are as transparent as you can be. They have to be by state law.
I wonder if it would make sense to ask the Park Building Committee to take this one on.
Great idea.
We haven't met yet. We need to do that. Why don't we see if we can get a meeting going, between now and the next regular meeting, and see if we can get some research done on this.
Len, have you made all the appointments to the Parks Buildings Committee, or?
Oh, that is an excellent question. I kind of did. I think I know Peter's on it, and I asked all of the existing members to stay on it. That's as far as I got with appointments. I also invited anybody who's interested in participating to join. I think what we can do is we can get a notice out, get it on the website, and then anybody who wants to come can come. And if they want to actually join the committee, we can do that. Okay? So we do need somebody to quarterback getting that meeting going.
I'm not on the committee.
Is that Chuck? Is that
Yes,
you?
I actually was the chair. I'm debating if it's worth my time to pursue it, since everybody has a better idea than I on how to manage it.
I'm happy to take over that board if.
That's fine.
Okay.
All right, and I'll offer you my assistance, Michelle.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes.
And Peter, thank you for being willing to join us. Okay, we have one final item. Chief, could you brief us, please?
And talk fast so we don't have to extend the meeting past 10:30.
Have an argument over that 4/5 vote. That's joking.
Yeah, can we have at least a motion to table this until the Park Building Committee
All right, okay.
meets? And
We'll move to continue this item until the convening of the, is it the Parks Committee?
Yeah, Park Building Committee, and hopefully we'll have that meeting before the next meeting and get some sort of report at the next regularly scheduled meeting. So that's a motion?
Motion?
Yes, it is.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. And now we move on.
the California Special District Association has an opening to fill a vacant position in the Bay Area chapter of the Board of Directors, the CSDA. If any of the board members are interested in running for that open position or fulfilling that term, they need a resolution by their own board, and we will submit that to the CSDA, then you will be placed in the election process. So what's before you tonight is if any member of the board wants to run to complete that term for Seat A on the CSDA Board of Directors.
I don't.
I'll pass on that, personally. Save myself for Congress.
Anybody else interested?
This is to fill a vacancy?
Yes.
And the vacancy expires at the end of 2015, is that right?
Yes.
You're just nominating folks, right?
I'm sorry?
The board is just nominating.
They're nominating a candidate, and then you would have to run in an election
Yeah.
against other people that were nominated.
I think if Ms. Cordova is interested, this is in her area of expertise.
I think Ms. Cordova is still recovering from the last election. So I'll pass respectfully, but I appreciate your vote of confidence.
Hold out for Congress.
All right, it sounds like we don't have any takers, is that right?
No, thank you.
All right, then I believe that concludes our meeting. It's been a rough one tonight, folks. Thank you all for coming. I'm sorry so many people have left already. As Pat said, the comments were tough. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We adjourn. Thanks again, folks. We have listened.